All right, let's jump right into this. We are looking at two of the most confusing, most talked about, unsolved cases in modern history. One is a viral internet mystery, the other a brutal family murder from 100 years ago. Now, on the surface, they couldn't possibly be more different. But as you'll see, they share some connections that are, well, they're just so chilling you can't unsee them.
And right away, we're hit with stuff that just doesn't add up. This quote, it's about the very last video we have of a young woman, right before she vanished forever. A body language expert looks at it and says, there's no fear. In fact, there's an element of play. I mean, how does that, a playful moment, become the prelude to such a dark tragedy? That's the first thread we're going to pull on. So let's start with our first case. We're going to January 2013, to the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. A 21-year-old Canadian student, Elisa Lam, is on a trip, and she suddenly disappears. The last time anyone saw her was on a security camera in an elevator, and that footage would go on to create a video that pretty much broke the internet and haunted millions of people.
Okay, so there's a really important piece of context here for the official story. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and according to her family, she wasn't always consistent with taking her medication, which, could sometimes lead to these really intense psychotic episodes, maybe even hallucinations. This becomes a key part of the official explanation.
So, the official story from the coroner's office looks pretty straightforward. They basically piece together this tragic sequence of events. A mental health crisis leads to a terrible accident, and 19 days after she vanished, her body was found. A maintenance worker found her in one of the rooftop water tanks after guests complained about low water pressure and, well, the water tasting weird. Case closed, right? Well, not quite.
And this is where that whole official story just starts to fall apart. Because for that conclusion to be true, Elisa would have had to overcome a whole series of obstacles that seem, well, pretty much impossible for one person to get through on their own.
Yeah, just look at the list of problems here. First off, how in the world did she even get onto the roof? It was locked. It had alarms. Then, how could she possibly have lifted the lid to that water tank? I mean, it was this massive, heavy piece of metal. And what's with the claims that the elevator video, the one everyone saw, was tampered with almost a whole minute missing? These aren't just small details, They're huge, gaping holes in the story that have kept people guessing for over a decade now.
But to really get the Elisa Lam case, you have to get the Cecil Hotel. This place, it's not just a building. It has a history, a really dark one. And some people believe that history is more than just a memory.
And get this number, at least 16. That's the minimum number of documented deaths, suicides, murders, you name it, that have happened at the Cecil. After it was built back in the 20s, it quickly became this magnet for all sorts of tragedy, especially after the Great Depression. Locals in LA literally called it the most haunted hotel in the city.
And we're not talking about stuff from the distant past. In the 80s, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was literally living on the top floor while he was on his killing spree for like $14 a night, and he'd just toss his bloody clothes in the dumpster out back. A few years after that, another serial killer, Jack Underweger, specifically checked in because he knew Ramirez had stayed there. The hotel's history is a whole other story.
Okay, so now we're going to do a complete 180. We're leaving modern LA and jumping back almost 100 years to a tiny, isolated farm in Bavaria, Germany, called Hinterkaifeck. This is where an entire family was murdered in a crime so strange and so brutal, it's still talked about as Germany's most infamous, most chilling cold case. And just like Elisa Lam's story, this one starts with a really weird prelude. Things got strange before the murders. The family's maid quit 6 months earlier because she was totally convinced the place was haunted, hearing noises from the attic. Then, the father of the family finds footprints in the snow coming from the woods to the house, but none going back. And then their house keys just disappear. It's like you can feel something closing in on them just from these little details.
And the crime itself it was beyond brutal. One by one, 4 members of the Gruber family were lured out to the barn and killed with a mattock, which is kind of like a pickaxe. Then, the killer walks back into the house and murders the family's 2-year-old son and the new maid. It was her very first day on the job. Can you imagine?
But this is the part of the story that just sends a shiver down your spine. After murdering 6 people, the killer didn't run. They didn't flee. They stayed. They lived there with the bodies for 3 days.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around that. They took care of the farm animals, they ate food from the kitchen, neighbors even saw smoke coming from the chimney the whole time. This wasn't someone who was panicking and running. This was someone who felt at home. It's an absolutely chilling thought.
So you can imagine the investigation was huge, right? They questioned over 100 suspects through the years, but they came up with nothing. No killer. The case was officially closed way back in 1955, but the questions, of course, they never went away.
Most of the theories really boil down to two main suspects. The first was Carl Gabriel, the husband of one of the victims. He was supposedly killed in World War I, but get this, they never actually found his body. The other was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor who had been her lover. He's the one who found the bodies, and he acted really suspiciously, moving things around at the crime scene.
Okay, now let's jump way forward to 2007. A police academy in Germany decides to use this as like a cold case training project for their students. And they actually concluded that one suspect was almost certainly the killer. But to protect any living relatives, they never said who it was. So the mystery, officially, is still unsolved.
So, let's step back. We've got a student in a modern LA hotel and a family on a remote German farm a century ago. Two totally different worlds. But when you start laying them side by side, the connections are, well, they're honestly pretty unnerving.
So first up, you have these really bizarre, ominous warnings before anything even happens. For Lam, it's that strange, playful behavior in the elevator video. For the Grubers, it's months of creepy attic noises, those mysterious footprints, and the missing keys. See the pattern? In both stories, you can just feel that something is deeply wrong before the tragedy even hits.
And then there's this, which might be the most chilling parallel of all. It's this idea of a lingering presence after death. The killer at Hinterkaifeck literally stays on the farm, living among the victims. Elisa Lam's body stays hidden in plain sight in the hotel's own water supply for 19 long days. It's like death isn't the final act. It's the start of this haunting occupation of the space.
And that's really the core of it, right? Both of these cases just refuse to be solved cleanly. For Elisa Lam, the official report of an accident just doesn't square with the physical reality of getting into that tank. And for Hinterkaifeck, you have a killer who literally lived at the crime scene for days and then just vanished into thin air. A century of looking has turned up nothing.
So, at the end of the day, these stories have become more than just true crime cases. They're basically modern folklore. The Elisa Lam case directly inspired horror movies, and even a whole season of American Horror Story. And Hinterkaifeck has been the basis for books and films in Germany for decades. They stick around because they poke at our deepest fears of the unknown, of things that just can't be explained.
Which really leaves us with one last question to chew on. Why do stories like these have such a hold on us? Is it just that we need an answer, or is it something deeper? Our fascination with finding patterns in chaos, and that terrifying possibility that sometimes things happen that just don't have an answer at all.